most of his history books were written or taken from the surviving records, the diaries and the court records and things where people themselves living those events spoke about them and expressed their innermost thoughts and their motivations. This is when I discovered that history was extremely interesting, and not only that, extremely important. Well, from that point forward, I began to look at history in a different light, and I realized that where we are today is a direct result of drawing a straight line from where we were, even as far back as 1,000 years ago, and to see what transformations that straight line went through, what kind of thinking filters it went through. And it was in pretty much a straight line until it reached the American Republic and the creation of our nation. I recognized that there was a great change. It was no longer a straight line. There was a change when our founding fathers won the American Revolution, and they had a chance to continue the line and just make themselves the new rulers, but instead they made a hard turn. And they said, no, we're going to not follow this pattern. We're going to create a system in which the people will be in charge, and the rulers, so-called rulers, will no longer be rulers. They will now be public servants. This was a whole new concept, and the founding fathers deserve the credit for that. So I recognize that was a major change in the pattern of history. So now that became the new point. I began to measure where we were at that point through the first 100 years of our existence, and I saw that it too was a straight line for the first 100 years. It led to prosperity. It led to personal freedom. It led to abundance. It led to a culture and a lifestyle that was the envy of the world. But then, at the turn of the last century, I saw that line start to curve. It curved more and more, starting with about the Wilson administration. It curved right back to where it used to be, back to that totalitarian concept, where the people were no longer in charge, but they were at the bottom of the pyramid, the bottom of the heap, and the rulers were once again in charge. It took about 50 years for that really to happen, and it's continuing to happen, but by the time the Wilson administration had given way to the Roosevelt administration, the course had already been changed. Well, you have to recognize, where you're coming from in history before you know where you're headed into the future. So I'm perhaps taking too long to say this, or I've said it too many times, but the point is, the answer to that young lady that was sitting there is that she has to learn some history. We all have to learn some history. The more history we know, the better we are at predicting where we're headed. Because humans behave the same over and over again. Absolutely. The motivations are the same. Our desires are the same. There's a fairly good even division between the good and the bad among most people. And the main thing, I think, is the lesson of history, is that if you give people the power to coerce their fellow human beings, you know what they're going to do? They're going to do it. They're going to do it. That's the bottom line. And so we have gradually moved from a government which had limitations on the government. The whole purpose of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution was primarily to put limitations on the power of government officials. The government shall not infringe on our right of freedom of speech or the right to bear arms or peaceful assembly or any of these things. It's that Congress shall pass no law. Yeah, this is respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or the press or the right to assemble or petition the government for redress of grievances. And we know this is classical tyranny. For anybody who's read history and knows common sense, this is really scary what's happening. And now, G. Edward Griffin, they've rolled out, the Army is practicing to take over cities for your safety. The fact that they're unveiling that shows how far down the line we've gotten. Well, that's the whole point. We've allowed that line of history to be turned right while we were watching it. And so we are now, I was going to say, headed back to the old style of government. I'm going to change that. I'm going to say we're already there. We've already returned to that stage. So now what we need to do is to move forward into the past. Well, it's every generation faces a tyranny or a crisis, but every historian, every economist, every philosopher, every great mind I talk to, and even the enemies of freedom, Zbigniew Brzezinski and others, say this is the first time in modern history that all of humanity is awake and staring at the elite.
And the globalists know that. So all of these attempts to flood everything with corruption and oppression is an attempt to reaffirm their illegitimate criminal dominance. And every person listening has to realize the magnitude of the historical human crossroads. You're going to die, G. Edward. I'm going to die. My children someday will die, but through them having more children and living on, if I could meet my great-great-great-great-grandson or daughter, I know I would love them as much as I love my children today and as you love your children and your family. And it's fundamental that we must get past the fear, and by looking into our children's eyes and our wives' eyes, we understand that there is no fear. The only fear I have is that we don't stand up and fight back. There is no fear in even being struck down by this dehumanizing system, because that's part of the human condition. Everything we have today, all the wealth, all the liberties, all the freedoms, all the great engines of creativity and the dynamic human spirit that we now have is based, and we stand on the shoulders of those founding fathers. We stand on the shoulders of the Magna Carta in 1215. We stand on the shoulders of every human exertion against oppression. And we know that liberty is the cornucopia of plenty. It is the cornucopia of enlightenment. It is the driving fulcrum of everything wholesome and good, and big government and tyranny and commissariats and commissions and committees is the engine of despotism and starving children and pain and war and dehumanization. It does not fill our spirit. It does not quench our thirst for goodness. It does not quench our thirst for righteousness. It is anathema to everything it is to exist. And people say, my gosh, you're getting death threats. You're being attacked by national news. They're coming after you. Aren't you afraid? And no, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of someone blowing my head off tonight. I don't want that to happen because of my mission. But I have passed the point of no return. I have committed to freedom. I have committed to this cause. I know it's right, and it has expanded my awareness, expanded my humanity to a fulfilled level where my cup runneth over, as the Bible says. And in closing, can you speak to the choice people have on what path they're going to follow? It's never too late to turn back and get out of their compartmentalization and choose decency and honor and truth and the will of liberty to resist tyranny, because as Thomas Jefferson said, all that evil men and tyrants need to flourish is that good men and women do nothing. G. Edward Griffin, one of the greatest living icons of the current liberty that we're now seeing expand and the awakening that's happening, someone whose shoulders I stand on. What are your final statements on that point I made?
Well, that perhaps is the most profound point there is, Alex, and you expressed it so well. All I could do to say is repeat what those before us have said. I don't know who first said this, but someone, very wise person, said, I have the courage to stand and fight, but I am too afraid to surrender. So when you think about that, the consequences of losing the battle that we're in are so horrible, not just to us, but to those who follow us.
The unborn.
The unborn. And, you know, we do have a continuity with them. It's something that young people don't think about. I never thought about it when I was young.
By resisting tyranny, we reach back and touch George Washington.
We touch George Washington, and we reach forward and touch our great-great-great-grandchildren, as you say. We do have a continuity. And, you know, I think when we all hit that point where we realize, whoops, this is our last day, maybe our last hour, and we sort of think about our lives, do you think we're going to recall all of the expensive toys we had, or all the baseball games we attended, or something like that? Or are we going to think about the things we've done that have lasting value for those who follow us?
We're going to think about the times we stood up for what was right and we helped others. Exactly. We're going to think about when we were 12 years old and stood up to that bully. We're going to think about watching our grandfathers and grandmothers die. We're going to think about family. We're going to think about the people we help. We're going to think about what really matters. And it's so beautiful to see this nihilistic selling point of humanism and me, and not caring and getting into, you know, not getting involved. That is the opiate of death, the opiate of weakness. And we have a chance while we're alive. Folks, don't wait. While you're alive in this short test that is consciousness to do the right thing. I mean, have you not been empowered? Have you not been fulfilled, G. Edward Griffin? Because I can feel your strength, your gravitas. I can feel your soul. Have you not been empowered by honorably standing and telling the truth, even though you were lied about and attacked all these years, and have now been vindicated? I can tell you don't even have pleasure in being vindicated. It's a quiet sadness that you saw it before others did, and now we're entering this time of great darkness. You wish we didn't have to be here. You wish we could have stopped it earlier and people would have laughed at you. But now the vindication comes.
Well, that's it exactly. There's nothing that makes me sleep better at night than to realize, just as I'm closing my eyes and reviewing the day, to realize that, oh boy, we really accomplished something there. And when I say accomplished, I don't mean we sold some books or something like that. I mean we reached someone. We got the message across. We heard that wonderful sound that you hear from a person when they go, aha. That is the most amazing sound. It thrills me when somebody, says, aha, I get it now. And I think that's what we're born for.
Yeah, it's beautiful to, we don't brainwash people. We don't tell people what to think. We just get them to take their own blinders off. We can't make somebody do that. They have to do it. And to see a soul, an intellect, an understanding turn on and go from darkness like a little mindless ghoul worshiping all the petty sports and fake icons and celebrity, and to watch that soul turn on like a sun and just explode into flame and truly be powerful and living the destiny they were meant to have. That is what is beautiful. And the truth is beautiful, and camaraderie and honor and goodness and duty and being steadfast and knowing you're real. And that's why the enemy attacks you and myself and many others and Ron Paul, because they know in their gut we are bona fide. They know we are real. They know we are committed to something bigger than their manufactured false paradigm, and that scares them, G. Edward Griffin.
Well, yes, and I don't really expect too much in the way of deep philosophical thought to come out of popular movies, but when you think about Star Wars, there were some very profound implications there when they...
Archetypal.
Yes, when they speak of the dark side and the light side. When you think about that, that's real. And we are on the side of light, and these people, other people, are on the dark side. And that gives us a power that they wish they had. They may have all the money in the world. They may have all the military power in the world. They may have all the brainwashing capacity in the world because they control communications, but the thing they do not have is truth. That puts them on the dark side, and that's a powerful force on our side. And one of the reasons I'm so glad to participate in this program is because it's one of the means of communicating the truth and brightening that bright spot a little bit more.
G. Edward Griffin, beautifully said. Your new film that you produced, What in the World Are They Spraying? Excellently done, very well documented about the geoengineering and the aluminum and all the rest of it. It's available at Infowars.com. It's available also at your sites, and I just hope that people get it and get it out to everyone they know, because it just goes to the fact that there's so much going on they've hidden, and now it's being revealed, and we have exposed it over the years, so now they're admitting much of it but putting their spin on it. G. Edward Griffin, thank you so much for spending time with us, and I look forward to having you back on in the near future. God bless you.
Well, thank you, Alex, and may the force of freedom be with you.
The Freedom Force. And give us the Freedom Force website.
Oh, yes. Well, that's www.freedomforceinternational.org.
It's funny you bring up the Star Wars parallel or analogy, because there's been little jokes around the office that you look like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Well, that's not too bad. I'll take that for now.
No, he's a handsome guy. G. Edward, you're awesome. God bless you and take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.